educator for Tobacco-Free Nebraska at the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. TOPS is organized by Mike Pesco at the University of Missouri, C. Shang at the Ohio State University, Michael Darden at Johns Hopkins University, Jamin Hartman Boyce at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and Justin White at Boston University. This seminar will be 1 hour with questions from the moderator and discussant. The audience may post questions and comments in the Q&A panel, and the moderator will draw from these questions and comments in conversation with the presenter. Please review the guidelines on tobaccopolicy.org for acceptable questions. Please keep the questions professional and related to the research being discussed. Questions that meet the seminar series guidelines will be shared with the presenter afterward, even if they are not read aloud. Your questions are very much appreciated. This presentation is being video recorded and will be made available along with the presentation slides on the TOPS website, tobaccopolicy.org. I'll turn the presentation over to today's moderator, Jamie Hartman Boyce from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, to introduce our speaker.
Thanks so much, Kyla. Today we continue our winter 2026 season with a single paper presentation by Shiqi Zhang entitled A Systematic Review of Stated Preference Experiments in Tobacco Research. This presentation was selected via a competitive review process by submission through the TOPS website. Shiqi Zhang is a PhD candidate in Agriculture, Environmental, and Development Economics at The Ohio State University, or OSU. He also serves as a graduate research assistant at the Center for Tobacco Research, OSU James Comprehensive Cancer Center. His primary research interests lie in transportation, urban, and health economics. He's currently conducting research on substance use and regulation using choice experiments and other causal inference methods. Shiqi's research has been published in the European Journal of Health Economics and Preventative Medicine Reports. Dr. C. Shang, an associate professor at the OSU College of Medicine, is a co-author of the study and will answer select questions in the Q&A. Shiqi, thank you so much for presenting for us today.
Um, yeah, thank you. Uh, Hello everyone. Thanks for joining our presentation today. I'm Shiqi Zhang, and today I'm glad to present our study, a systematic review of stated preference experiments in tobacco research. So let me start from our background and review questions. So, stated preference experiments is an increasingly popular method used in tobacco research. It is usually used to address the needs for evaluating policies, especially those regulating emerging products. Here we do a comparison. Compared with the reviewed preferences, stated preference methods usually use experiments rather than observational data. It studies the hypothetical behavior rather than the behavior in the real world. And one of the advantage of stated preference is that it can explore novel products or new policies that are not implemented. Because stated preference analysis is carried with experiments, this method can get rid of real-world limitations, such as lack of variation or confounding factors. It can also study products that are underreported or not well captured by the survey data. So there are various experimental methods like discrete choice experiments or DCE and best worst scaling are the most classic ones. Some researchers can combine the two methods. Uh, Experimental tobacco marketplace or ETM is an emerging method started from mid 2010s. There is one more stated preference methods called hypothetical purchase task. It uses consumption of one product in response to a wide range of price variations. Because it focuses on only one product rather than comparing preferences between products, we do not include it in our sample. Here, I would like to give you several examples of those stated preference methods. So DCEs are the most popular stated preference method used in tobacco research. So here is an example. In this case, researchers will let respondents to choose among different products with different features, such as price, banning in public places, and health consequences. Uh, Prices are recommended but to include in the discrete choice experiment, but it's not necessary. The outcome of DCEs is usually binary, but there are some extensions to that ask about the quantities the respondents choose, and we call it volumetric choice experiment or VCE. Here is an example of tobacco best-worst scaling. There are three cases of best-worst scaling. Case one include a list of items, for example, features or brands. Most studies in case one focuses on tobacco cessation treatments or health outcomes, so it do not include case one BWS in our sample. And the example shown here is of case two. In this case, researchers will ask respondents to answer which feature of products makes him most or least want to use the specific product. And in case three, respondents will face a series of product profiles and choose the best and worst options. Since DCEs also let respondents to choose among products, so some researchers combine the two methods in this sense. Here is an example of experimental tobacco marketplace. So price variation is necessary in this case to elicit consumptions, and the experiment will mimic the real purchase behavior, and participants can take home money according to their behaviors. So there are many review studies on those three methods. For DCEs, the researchers conclude that the number of DCE studies grew rapidly in the last decades, and it is an ideal tool to inform regulatory policies, but with some limitations. And specifically to the tobacco research, Regmi et al. 2018 did a great review, but the results need to be updated since the studies of DCEs have been rapidly increasing during recent years. There are also many review studies on BWS. The researchers conclude that it is becoming a mainstream method, but no BWS review focusing on tobacco marketplace only. So this is a gap we will fill in. And since ETM is an emerging method, there are less review studies on it. Biko et al. 2018 conclude that it is usually used to explore the conditions where various tobacco products may interact with one another. And it is a method that's specific to tobacco, but also have some applications in cannabis and alcohol. So we think it's time to conduct a systematic review of various tobacco experiments because of existing reviews are either not specific to tobacco studies or are outdated. And the increasing number of total experiments in the literature also requires we to do an updated uh, review studies. Our goal is to first summarize the terminologies and practice of various experiments, and then identify similarities and differences between the experimental methods. And we also want to assess the quality and risks for bias in these experiments and their policy relevance and impacts. And finally, we would like to develop a guideline for tobacco experiments. Um, so this is how we do our review study. We first use Prisma guidelines to develop our systematic review protocol, and we register it with the Prospero code as shown here. We do a lot of searching work. Our search database are Web of Science, Scopus, Econlit, and PubMed. We come up with searching terms according to our knowledge to current stated preference studies, and then we modify these searching terms for each searching engine and use several iterations to improve the list terms by accounting for some alternative spellings. And the databases were last searched on August 31st, 2023. We have some eligibility criteria to help screen the studies. So I will pause a little bit here so that you can race through the criteria, and I will also talk. So first, the studies should be written in English, and we also include the studies with stated preference experiments related to tobacco purchasing behavior or to the regulation of tobacco marketplace. And we don't consider studies that are reviewed preference or using secondary data or doing qualitative or case studies or doing review studies. We also exclude studies that do not include participants or treat tobacco products as an attribute. We also exclude those with only one product and many features. And uh, because the studies focusing on tobacco cessation treatments are usually considering the behavior interventions on one product, and thus we do not include them in our sample as well. So we use the covidence as a tool during our screening process, and we do a double coding process. We take three stages, including title and abstract review, full text review, and finally, we do a quality check. On the right here, I produce the inter-rater reliability of stage 1 and 2. The reliability of stage 1 are about 0.73, and for stage 2, it's around 0.77. Uh, these numbers indicate that raters are agreed fairly strongly during screening process. Here is our searching and screening results and final sample components. So we provide the flowchart of our work here. So after screening, the final sample include 79 papers. And because some have multiple experiments, so there are 94 experiments in total. After the screening process, we extract information from studies in the final sample according to these five aspects: the experimental characteristics, recruitment and administration, experimental methodology, analysis and modeling, and study quality and policy relevance. And we score each experiment according to Pref's checklist, which measures the quality of purpose, respondent sampling, explanations, and finding completeness and significance testing. And besides, each reviewers had their own subjective quality score and policy relevance score. So before I enter in the result part, do you have any questions?
Thanks so much. So audience members, please do start putting your questions in the Q&A. I'm also really happy to say that today we have a wonderful discussant, Dr. Roberta Freitas Lemos, an assistant professor at the Fralin Biomedical Research Institute at Virginia Tech, Carilion. She's interested in experimentally investigating the effects of tobacco policies on tobacco purchases. and consumption. So, Roberta, I will hand over to you for any comments you might have at this point.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to discuss this presentation, Jamie. I wanted to compliment the authors. This is a great initiative to bring together this methods under the same umbrella. I think it is a time when there are increasing questions about and ex skepticism about the experimental methods that we use. So I think this kind of integrative review is especially valuable, and it helps clarify how what these approaches actually contribute. I'm curious just how you see the roles of these methods differing in terms of under what condition or questions should we choose each of them? And you mentioned a guideline, and maybe you're going to talk about this.
Yes, in the end, I will mention the guidelines.
Okay.
Yeah, I will provide some suggestions on how you choose the method based on your study goals.
Okay. And then you also stated that one goal was to assess policy relevance and impact. Can you help us understand how you defined and you measure that?
You mean the fourth one here?
Yeah.
Um, yes, actually, we have a score that is like here it's subjective, so each reviewer will score the policy relevance, so they will score based on their understanding of the study and understanding of the conclusion and extrapolations of whether this is relevant to policies, or maybe in the studies, the authors will write explicitly that some relevant policies, and we will give relatively high scores on those studies, for example. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any more questions from the audience right now, so I think continue with your presentation, and please do start putting those in the Q&A, and thank you so much, Roberta.
Okay, thank you. First I would like to provide the publication trends. So here is the number of studies published across years. Before 2015, there were a few stated preference studies on tobacco marketplace, and after that, there was a huge increase. Uh, and specifically to different study types, DCEs remained the most popular across years. PWS was emerging but less popular. And we can see that ETM emerged after 2015 and became increasingly popular. Um, here I'll provide the summary of the number of studies by tobacco features and regulations. So most studies include price and flavor as their main features. And because these two are frequently mentioned in the related regulations. And besides, warnings, messaging, and packaging design is popular in stated preference studies as well, because it is easier to study individuals' respondents to to these features under experiments rather than using observational data. And there are many other features like package size or beliefs. We put them in the other category. So here, I provide the percentage of sampling characteristics. So most experiments conducted in the US, and the participants are generally older adults, the orange part in the middle. But there are also studies focusing on youth and young adults, which is the red part. And most studies focus on tobacco users or general population. Only 1% focused on non-tobacco users. The average sample size is about 725, with the minimum at 20 and maximum at over 5,000. Um, so most studies did not justify their sample size, and among those who justify, most use sample size calculation method, and some use historical or empirical information to justify. So sample size calculation is uh, generally there are two ways to do the sample size calculation. One is power-based, uh, where the researchers will choose a sample size so the study has a high chance of detecting a meaningful effect. And about the second one is the precision-based justification. So in this case, the researchers will choose the sample size to make estimates precise enough. And on the right, I provide the percentage of administration modality. So most experiments was conducted online and respondents completed by themselves. And other administration modality include respondents complete experiments on computer or by paper, or they are asked questions by an interviewer. Here are two histograms that shows the distribution of experiment complexity and participants' burden. So most experiments have less than 5 attributes or have less than 12 tasks per person. By participants burden, I mean how many number of tasks a person need to complete. Because some experiments may have multiple sections, so respondents can finish some tasks in one section and then take a rest and then continue to finish other tasks. So here, we only so here the index we use is the total number of tasks per person. Um, Here, I provide the analytical, as for the analytical methods, among studies with explicit statements of analysis model, uh, conditional multinomial logic is the most common one. Uh, and some studies also use latent class or random effect or mixed logic to analyze their experiments. And other analysis models include mixed linear regressions, sequential best first choice modeling, etc. On the other hand, the outcome measure uh, are are not consistently reported among studies. The most commonly reported outcomes is the uh, coefficients, but some studies also report relative importance or odds ratio or market shares predictions, and etc. Um, so in our sample, 31 experiments use qualitative methods. Interviews is the most common one. And there are three rationale of using qualitative methods appear in the experiments with equal importance. So they are level selection, attribute selection, and pre-testing questionnaire. Most experiments report main effects only uh, about 20% also report the two-way interaction. And among those reported with design software, they use the sawtooth is the most common one. Um, Most studies did not assess the heterogeneity. Among those who did, 31 experiments carried stratified analysis to estimate the heterogeneity effects among different groups. And as for the external validity testing, the experiment's validity is uh, Most experiments use findings from existing literature to justify the validity. Other sources include observed data like Nielsen and National Survey, or use qualitative data or use calibration methods. So here is the results of our scoring. We use the PREPS list. So PREPS scoring is a popular method used to evaluate the quality of studies. The studies are scored according to the checklist by each reviewers. The PREPS score is between 0 and 1. So the prep score actually evaluates five aspects of the study, whether the purpose is clearly stated, whether respondents are similar to non-respondents, and also the clarity of explanations of methodology, the completeness of findings, and whether significant tests were used. And because it is scaled between 0 and 1, we can regard the means, the averages, as the percentage as well. So we find that in our sample, the purpose of all studies are considered to be clearly stated, but few studies did the but because the because few studies did the test of experiment quality, so we can see that the second score is low here. This may indicate biases in experiments. And we also find 97% of experiments have clear explanations on methods, and 93% have complete findings, and 96% use significant tests. In summary, the average PREPS score is 3.89. Um, So we also evaluate the policy relevance. We find that 86 experiments had clearly stated policy statements, and 76 experiments had FDA research priority. In the final part, we compared between ETM and the BWS. Um, We find that respondents' consumption are regarded as continuous in all ETM studies, while only 1.5% of BWS DCE experiments are continuous in consumption. And the administration also shows difference. We find that most DCE BWS conducted online, because most DCE and BWS conducted online, there are relatively low percentage of administration in person, while ETM are more likely to conduct it in person. And we also compare the number of product alternatives, attributes, and sample size. We find that ETM studies have relatively large number of alternative options, but with less number of attributes and smaller sample size. On the other hand, the two methods also have something in common. Uh, Both BWS and DCE and ETM can be administered online to obtain a large sample size, and both within and between subject variations can be built into BWS, DCE, and ETM. And both VCE and ETM's explicit consumption units or measures, and both methods can contain a wide range of opt-out or status quo product options. So here is our conclusion. So first, DCEs and BWS DCEs contains more product attributes and have larger sample size, while ETM is more likely to be administered in person and can contain more tobacco products. Um, and we also find uh, some areas that can call for improvements of the experiments. For example, using qualitative data to design and interpret experimental data, or assessing heterogeneity, or testing external validity, and report comparable measures and outcomes, we think will significantly improve the quality of experiments. So here are our suggestions. So if your study focuses on preference between many products, or you would like to explore the heterogeneity between subjects, or explore price effects, and focus on continuous consumptions, maybe ETM is a better fit. If you prefer larger sample size or more manipulations or interventions, or focusing on within subject effects, or if your study does not include prizes, or you would like to see binary choice outcomes, DCE or BWS might be a better fit. That's my presentation today. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, a very well-conducted systematic review. Thanks also to our audience members who've been adding questions. Please keep them coming. But first off, I would like to hand over to Roberta, our discussant for today.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, great presentation. Thank you so much for sharing all this. Again, I think this is a very important integration. And I want to go back to one of your slides about external validity, and that's related to my comment earlier. Critics sometimes say that these experiments don't perfectly reflect real-world conditions, and that's true, right? Online experiments remove real spending constraints, and lab-based ETM studies are highly controlled. Uh, but I think that's what also gives them value, right? There's no real-world setting where we can systematically manipulate multiple product attributes, prices, regulatory scenarios, and ethically observe those responses. That said, I think there's still room for improvement, and we can strengthen external validity by, validating predictions against real-world behavior, using hybrid designs to capture heterogeneity, as you said, reporting the context-specific limitations. But my question, based on what you told us and all your research and reading all those papers, how do you recommend researchers access or improve the external validity of these three methods? Comments on that. I think it's super helpful.
Yes. So in my understanding, I think the first you need to refer to related literatures and see their conclusions, and uh, see how your experiment is consistent or inconsistent with their results. And then, if you have more time, I would say, if you have more time, you can look at the revealed preference data, like some observational data, like Nielsen or national surveys, and see how the total population behave, rather than your experiment compared to your experiment results. So that can justify whether there are some selection bias or other issues in your experiment design.
Thank you so much. I think C, your co-author, might like to weigh in right now, so I will let her come on in.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Roberta, for the great question. So, after reviewing all the studies, we feel there are generally two ways to increase the external validity. First, there are ways to incentivize participants to answer truthfully, and we know that by giving them real money and they can take back their products, that would be a great way to start. And for the online studies, we noticed that there are, there's rich literature in marketing and other areas that the cheap talk scripts ask people to please do answer truthfully does work. So there is a huge literature in the general discrete choice experiment, reviews that provide a lot of good recommendations that I think, our tobacco studies should follow. So those are a way to address the concerns of external validity. And the second one is, as what Shiqi said, there are ways to correct the answers, right? So for example, there are calibrations that have been used in choice experiments. There have been studies that integrate qualitative data, qualitative research into the design. So for example, it can be used to elicit whether I understand better why people choose to answer the way they are, or like whether this you answer truthfully in the experiments. So integrating different methodologies, I think, would also help with increasing the external validity or have a check on the validity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, both for the answers. We definitely, from an ETM researcher, should definitely look more into other literature to improve our methods. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Anything else from you, Roberta?
Not at this point.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I see questions are coming in. I also have a couple of questions asked from some of the hosts who can't put questions into Q&A. So I'll start off with those. We have a question from Mike Pesco. For the way that effect coefficients are reported, how many studies provided all of the information that would be needed to convert these into a standardized unit? That would be really interesting to quantify and provide best practices on.
Um, I'm sorry, I'm not quite following. Can you
Sure,
repeat?
sure. So I think the question is, and Mike, please do jump in if I'm misrepresenting my understanding of your question. But one of the things I think we find, at least I find when I'm doing systematic reviews, is that reporting is so variable. And it can really hamper any kind of particularly statistical synthesis. So it's really hard to meta-analyze things if effect sizes are reported in lots of different ways. So I think Mike's question is, where effect coefficients or effect sizes were reported, how many of them provided enough information that you might be able to combine their results with other studies?
Um, so we actually at start in the searching process we searched by the terminologies and we've searched for uh 2000 studies, and by this eligibility criteria we screen with two stages. In the first stage, we look at the title and abstract, and we eliminate those unrelevant, and then we have four reviewers to read the full text, and we discussed weekly, and we use the majority rule to handle the conflicts.
Do you mind
So,
me to weigh in again? Sorry.
yes.
Yeah, so basically Mike is asking and JB is asking about all this reporting coefficients, other type of measurements. and how do we synthesize them. So it's definitely a challenge. Actually, that's one of the conclusions that we want maybe the studies in the future to report a comprehensive set of measures so that we can harmonize them. Right now, it's really challenging. I'm sure Roberta knows that maybe ETMs, by its own category, it's easy to harmonize. But if we want to compare the results from DCE with ETM, it's going to be very challenging. And actually, within the DCEs, there are so many different measures that are reported. So sometimes it's the relative importance, which is sometimes the utility score, our coefficients, our willingness to pay. So, one argument to include the prices in all the choice experiments is eventually we can convert everything to willingness to pay so they're all comparable, but it's not always doable. And the other thing is about this debate in the choice experiment literature to do either effects coding or dummy coding. So most of the tobacco DCEs so far, including my own DC studies, are using dummy coding instead of effects coding. So the outcome then is that it's really hard to convert the coefficients into relative importance. So that's definitely kind of like a big, huge challenge for us uh, to compare the results. So that's going to be one conclusion of our paper, of the review is to help people to inform future research to report maybe everything. So they're actually the similar way. They are very similar. They are basically they're all based on same regressions. But because of the reporting differences, we end up not being able to harmonize them. Yeah.
Yeah. Really common problem and a frustrating one when you know the data is there, but you just can't access it. So another question, this one's from Justin White, and it's around external validity and external validation. He says, among the 7 studies which compared results to external data for validation, did you look at or analyze how well the stated preference data compared to the real world data? Are you able to say if there were any discrepancies or if it seemed relatively consistent?
Uh, yeah, here.
Oh, great. So it looks like, if you wouldn't mind just discussing this a little bit, are these pulling in where it compares with observed data, that number 7, was it, did it compare well, or did it flag any differences?
Um, actually, actually, this is a binary variable in our scoring sheet, and
Mm.
if we see there are some explicit expressions like uh, they use the results from or observations from Nielsen or surveys, some representative surveys. Then we will grade it as 1 and said it is there are some comparisons with observed data.
And did you look
So
further? Oh, sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry.
No. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, yes, you are right. Maybe we do not focusing on estimating the or assess the quality of those comparisons. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. That would be interesting to look at in the future.
Yes.
Roberta, I believe you might have one more question to come in with.
Yes, I forgot to ask before. So you provided a rationale for not including the hypothetical purchase tasks because they're mostly single commodities. But did you take a look at the cross-commodity purchase tasks, and do you think that they would add value to this review?
Um.
The cross commodity purchase tasks are the ones that they are basically the single commodity hypothetical purchase tasks in which you have the price of one commodity increasing, but then you have the price of a second commodity and the same task constant. So because you said that the reason why for not including those ones were the single commodity, perhaps the cross commodity purchase tasks could add value or add information if this is something that would be interesting or relevant.
Can I weigh in? So basically, considering, I'm aware of those type of hypothetical purchase tasks, but usually it is one single commodity in response to the prices of another commodity. So there don't have the profiles or product files side by side for choices, unlike the ETM or discrete choice experiments. And also, the other reason that we are not including the hypothetical purchase tasks is unlike this other type of experiments, the price variation is huge in hypothetical purchase tasks. So my understanding is that they're not really trying to mimic real marketplace scenarios, but try to get a sense of like, let's say if the price can be raised really high, at what point, the consumption will become zero. That's a commonly reported outcome. So when we synthesize findings or like provide recommendations, that's going to be a challenge. So that's another consideration why we're not including hypothetical purchase tasks. I feel that design more like integrated into maybe cessation research and understanding, behaviors that could be um, not so closely aligned with real market price, for example, or real market conditions. I hope that answers the question. Yeah, it's just
Yes,
it's
thank you.
it's just my hypothesis. I feel like that's the way the experimental methodologies are designed. So that just brings us the question that in this all these stated preference methodologies are great, but they may be more suitable for answering certain specific questions. Maybe answer certain, like for example, cessation incentives better than others when we look at hypothetical purchase tasks. Whereas the ETMs, and choice experiments are probably better suited to answer real world, policy impact questions, for example. And I also want to bring up that I think she also mentioned that the BWIs is the buzzword scaling is commonly used in other areas and increasingly used in our tobacco research. And there are so many different cases, but very often it's case three that we see. So it's basically discrete choice experiment. But then in those experiments, people are asked to choose the best option and the worst option. But there are also other types of BWIs that are differently designed and they're less similar to DCE. So that's why there is some confusion when we mention BWIs, or when we see discrete choice experiments, and we don't know which terminology to use. That's because the case three BWIs is actually DCE, with one more question on the best and worst products to choose. So yeah, so it's really interesting. I feel that's another conclusion we have is to sort of clarify those terminologies. Thank
That answer your question, Roberta. Great. Um, so I noticed a few interesting things that have already been answered in the Q&A that I just kind of wanted to flag and also see, Shizi, if you have any thoughts on. One of the questions was if people had pre-registered their hypotheses and analysis plans. So the people who are conducting the studies, have they registered these in advance? Especially, it's definitely recommended in fields where there's controversy, such as tobacco research, right? We know this is best practice in most fields. And the question was whether researchers pre-registered their analysis plans as an additional quality measure, and if you looked at that. And C responded that only one study out of 74 had pre-registered their study. So it might be more popular in more recent studies, and I understand that you all might be looking at integrating those in the future. But I wondered why? Do you have any ideas why pre-registration is so uncommon? And similarly, any ideas for what we can do to increase it as a norm in the field?
So I want to kind of also ask Roberta that what's the current practice when researchers do ETMs? You know, do you register them, pre-register them? Because I just because I'm more familiar with DCE, and unfortunately there are not many DCEs that are pre-registered. I guess it's just a practice. If we advocate for this, it might happen more often. I do acknowledge that there are challenges, and a lot of the studies are, in my opinion, unlike like randomized trials, it's just the practitioner's choice. So if we have a culture to do this, I feel that we will do this more often in the future.
Is it something that journal editors look out for at all? Because I think, especially in trials, that has been one of the things that has moved this along is both journals and funders almost requiring it as a condition for publication and funding. I don't know if that exists in other spaces yet.
I think that's a good point. I don't think editors look into this often. I mean, pre-registration often for DCE type of studies. Although
Yeah.
it's for ETM and DCEs currently based on the NIH definition, that trials.
Yeah.
So, it's at least it's the BASH type of trials, the basic science type of trials. So, the field is moving. Like when I first started to do choice experiments, they are not considered as trials. There are not that many guidelines to say like what to do in the scenario, but the NIH already kind of, make sure better define bias trials and DCs fall into that category.
Yeah.
So I think, it's definitely gonna incentivize researchers to follow the standards, basically. So, Roberta, do you have any thoughts about this, especially ETM studies?
Yeah, I mean, I agree when you say it's evolving. I think the practices, we do register on clinicaltrials.gov every in-lab experiment that we have, that we conduct. But analysis plan, I think we have just started like registering the analysis plan, like a more robust plan. And I think we have done like twice at this point.
Where do you register those analysis plans, Roberta?
I think it's OSF.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Open Science Framework for anyone who's listening and wondering. Free. I find it quite easy to use. Great. An audience member just pointed out that there's at least one journal in economics where you can, it sounds like, register your pre-analysis plan with them, and the journal will then commit to publishing it, regardless of what you find, as a way to counteract publication bias, right? Where studies with null results are less likely to be found, which can absolutely undermine our efforts as systematic reviewers. So thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting. Okay, well, I think that is it from us. Thank you all so much. Thanks for a really good presentation, great questions, great discussion. And I will hand over to our MC to close us out.
Thank you. So that's the end of our time. Thank you to the presenter, the moderator, and discussant. And finally, thank you to the audience of 115 people for your participation. Have a tops-notch weekend.